Charlie. How you doing today?
What begins as excitement ends in tears for Rakila Harris Dudley and her children.
What's wrong, Daddy Man?
You'll be okay.
He want Mama to come back home.
Yeah.
It's okay. Don't cry.
Separated by less than 2 miles and by a jail policy that doesn't allow in-person visitation. Rakila's parents, Philip and Brenda, have been caring for Rakila's children in her absence.
Every day, where's Mama when she's coming home?
But it must have made for some rough moments with the kids.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I said, well, right now, Granny's mommy, and I'm going to hold you until you feel better.
Well, it's hard to explain, especially to the oldest. He's angry all the time, and he's not concentrating in school.
It'd be better if Mommy could explain that to him.
And she does, too, when she calls.
But those are the kind of conversations that for most people end in a hug.
Right.
Right.
Replacing free in-person visits with costly video calls has become the norm in hundreds of jails across the country. Here, detainees get 2 free 25-minute video calls per week. After that, a 25-minute call typically costs $10.
I love you.
Love you too.
The video calls are operated by for-profit telecommunications companies, but counties like Genesee get to pocket some of the revenue. Civil rights attorney Alec Karakasatis calls it a kickback scheme.
The theory behind these contracts seems to be if you stop kids from visiting their parents in person, these desperate families will be forced to spend more money on phone and video calls.
Now, the policy is at the center of 2 lawsuits in Michigan, including one of them here in Genesee County, which is fighting it.
There is not a constitutional right for in-person visitation, so they're trying to avoid it, and they're trying to come to Michigan to create some kind of constitutional right that simply does not exist.
Jail administrators have argued that video visits relieve pressure on staff and add convenience for families. But Karakasatis says video-only visits are painfully inadequate.
These services are full of glitches, they freeze, and a lot of times when people try to use the service and it doesn't work, they still get charged. When you eliminate the ability of people to visit with their families, you make everybody less safe because people are unhappier and acting out more.
This is Rakila's first time in county jail. Court records show she was accused of violently retaliating against her son's father after a fight turned physical in February. Rakila was left with this scar. Rakila couldn't afford bail, so this screen is the closest she can get to seeing her children.
It's very hard for my children to open up and talk to me over a phone versus it is in person. So I want to love on them and give them the security that they need, and I can't do that from here.
Sometimes children with parents in the jail write messages in chalk on the sidewalk, hoping their mom or dad might see it.
How does it feel that someone is making money off this?
It feels disheartening. It feels criminal. It feels like I'm going to take advantage of people just because I can.
You didn't commit a crime.
No.
Kids didn't commit a crime.
No.
But do you feel like you and they are the ones being punished?
Yes.
I feel it's greed. Greed.
If you could speak to the county officials, the people who make these rules, what would you tell them?
What about the people that can't afford to do for their loved ones? Should they be punished because somebody wants to make $1?
Sheriff Chris Swanson runs the jail and was a strong supporter of the policy when it began 10 years ago. He is personally named in the lawsuit.
How much money is the county making from video visits right now?
Over $400,000.
What was the reasoning behind it?
Money. I became the undersheriff in 2010. We had to cut 10% of our budget. When it came to the revenue, it was very attractive, and it still is to sheriffs across the country. But we're going to change that.
And by change that, Sheriff Swanson meant now. In our interview, he told me that he believes he made a mistake, and regardless of how the court rules, he says he's reversing course, reinstating in-person visits starting in July.
We're going to return to in-person visits, and we're going to reinvest our revenues back to lowering costs for jail calls and video visitations.
You're going to be leaving money on the table.
It's money I don't need. And it's money that doesn't come from the inmates, it comes from their families. And so you're penalizing people. And I see that now.
In 2020, Swanson launched a program called Ignite to educate people while they're incarcerated. Data show it helped reduce misconduct and repeat offenses that land people back in jail. He says he hopes changing the visitation policy has the same effect.
Well, this is part of the culture change. If you can keep people from ever coming back to jail, it's probably because they're not reoffending and they're not re-addicting. And when that happens, everybody wins.
You were one of the guys that was a proponent of ending in-person visits, and now you've made this giant turn here.
Because the person that I am today is not the same person I was in 2012, 2014.
But not long ago, you were celebrating the dollars coming in.
I accept that.
Why did it take a lawsuit, though, to make this turn?
It didn't have to.
But it did.
It did. I look at it as, what's the cost benefit? Could somebody bring contraband in? Jails will always struggle with contraband, and we'll always try to mitigate that. But what's more important? Restoring families, breaking generational incarceration, breaking generational poverty, so they don't come to jail. That's the answer. And it may take a little bit of a painful way to get there, but if the results prove it, then we were right.
What's your advice to others who wear the badge across this country?
My advice is always listen to the people closest to the problem. We are in a new time period, and so we don't need to just reform, we need to evolve.
As for Rakila, after more than 100 days in jail, she finally made bail, able once more to hug her children, unlike thousands of others in jails across the country.
Nightly Films is sponsored by Pfizer.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.